Hello and welcome back to the No Dig Norfolk Gardener. Now, we want to be planting out our onions today, and you can probably see here that the onions are looking really quite good and strong, and they're multi-sown. And what we actually want to do is to get those out into the garden and planted into their final growing positions. Now, we've dibbed our holes, and for those of you that are following along with us with our garden plan, this is plot 1 and this is bed 1, and that's where onions are going to go. They're also going to go into plot 3, bed 2, and also up into plot 5, bed 1. Now, onions really, they enjoy to grow in a weed-free environment. So before you do anything, you really want to have your weed strike. And we talked about that in our March tips for the month. So as soon as March comes around and the weather starts to warm up, have that initial weed strike. And if you know that your plot is quite weedy, do that and then leave it a couple of weeks or so, and then pull any weeds that come through and have that second weed strike. It's better that these vegetables go out slightly later, but your bed is weed free. Onions don't cope well with lots of weeds in there. Principal reason being is that they grow very upright, and they probably have about 4 or 5 green stalks that come up. So there's not a huge amount of foliage, so they can't smother the weeds. Unlike potatoes, when you grow potatoes, they flollop all over the place and weeds simply can't grow because the light cannot get to them. Now, this season we are growing an old favourite that we normally grow, which is Red Baron. We do really love that as a red onion, but then we decided to grow 2 new varieties to us that we haven't ever grown before. One is a variety called Reisenburger. I've heard really good things about that, so I'm really excited about growing that and to see what kind of harvest that produces for us. The other variety is a variety called Santero, which is an F1. Now, we've grown onions for many years, myself and Mrs. W, and I have to say that really, overall, we're quite successful at growing onions. We don't have too many failures when it comes to onions, particularly since we've gone to raising them from seed and not using the sets. But the one thing we haven't done is to ever grow an F1 onion, and I'm extremely curious about this, which is really the reason why we are actually trying the variety Santero. It is F1. I want to see whether it grows better. Do I get a better harvest? Is it better at resisting the diseases that can befall onions? All that we shall reveal through the coming months. But that's the reason why we're growing that. So, let's plant some onions. Now, although we do enjoy the flavour of red onions, they're not the dominant onion that we grow. It's normally white onions that we grow the most of. Our main onion that we'll grow will be a white one, and it is the Reisenburger. So we're going to start with that. And Mrs. W has written the label for me, and I know that because it's very neat. Not like Now you can probably see already on the camera that I've dibbed our holes. And in case you are new to our channel, we multi-sow all of our onions. And they could, when we originally put the seed in, there could have been anything from 6 to 8 seeds in there. And then we thinned down to, so there is only no more than 6 in there.
You can see the roots coming out the bottom as I stand looking at you.
You can, can't you?
Yeah, I mean underneath the tray, but yeah.
Looking really, really good. So in you go in there. Now, as usual, we like to plant things nice and deeply. You can see, can't you? Yes.
They're looking good.
Yeah. So these onion seeds were actually planted toward the end of January. So they're about 6 weeks old now. Hello, Poppy. And yeah, more than ready to be going into the ground. So now putting a row of the Red Baron in, and each of the 3 beds where the onions are going in, they will mirror each other. So there will always be 2 rows of Reisenberger, 1 row of Red Baron, and then 1 row of Santero. And the red onions are so good for salads, and also in particular when we cook our game, the red onions really come into their own. Now the last row will be Santero. This is the F1 variety. So that's the onions planted into their positions in plot 1, bed 1. Now there are 12 multi-sown cells of onions in each row. And by the time we finish doing what we will do to them over the coming months, there should be around about 4 onions in each. So there's 48 onions per row. Multiply that by 4. And then multiply that by the 3 beds that we will have growing in this garden, and you see it's a real possibility that we could have over 500 onions to harvest later on at the back end of July. Have we put the onions to bed, eh? Eh? Your mistress does like to put the duvet on, doesn't she, eh? So I'm just going to put that on there, and as you can see, we have put fleece over the top of these onions. And as I quite often say, if you're a regular follower of our channel, onions are fine if it's frosty. They don't particularly mind frosty weather, as long as it's not too harsh. But what they do not like in any way is the winds that you can probably hear now on my microphone. It's quite gusty. Those cold winds they don't like. Even though the temperature today is 9 degrees, it's still quite breezy around here. They don't like that. That will check them. So whenever we plant out our onions, what we do is to fleece them over, and that fleece will stay on there probably until getting towards the end of April, once the weather really has warmed up, and any winds we do get are warmer winds, and that just helps to get those onions off to a really good start. They can get their roots down into the soil. It's like being in the polytunnel by just having this little sort of hooped fleece over them. And what's underneath here is this. These are some things that we've kept over the years, and we in particular use these to put over the onions. They don't need the big blue domes, because as I say, in a month, 6 weeks time, this can come off and they can grow in, it will grow away nicely. This is purely just to keep those cold winds off them. And that's the first bed of our onions planted. As I said before, myself and Mrs. W have another 3 of these beds to do, so we had better get cracking on. Now, I do hope you found this video useful and that you've taken some tips from it in order that you can get yourself a really great onion harvest. And we shall see you on the next one.